Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm Arnau Caral Bassa. I am the chair of the EEAC Network, which is the European Network of Advisory Councils on the Environment and Sustainable Development, and one of the co-hosts of today's webinar, together with the Department for Sustainable Development in the Romanian government, the National Council for Sustainable Development in Germany, and also the Federal Council for Sustainable Development in Belgium. I'm pleased that so many of you are with us to discuss a very technical topic, but a very important topic, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. I will say I'm going just to introduce the session, because I will give the floor to our moderator. And I would like to express our most sincere gratitude to her. With only 48 hours before the start of this webinar, our initial moderator had to cancel her appearance due to a COVID infection, and Elise Buckle saved us by taking over the moderation at the absolute last moment. So Elise has been in touch with us in the past, and she has been always very kind to the EAC. So again, thank you for saving us at the very last moment. But due to this change, we had to change a little bit the program, and with an eye on the aim of this webinar, we made the decision to focus on knowledge sharing. So all the speakers will have ample time to share their experience with us, and we will wrap up at 12 sharp. Colleagues, I'm pleased that Elise, who has been working in the field of sustainable development and climate policy for 20 years, will skillfully guide us through the next hour or so. Elise, you have the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Arno, and many thanks to the many distinguished panelists and attendees. I think we have now almost 256 participants, and I'm so pleased to reconnect with you, Arno, and your network, because as you all know, we are facing a planetary emergency for climate, people, and nature, and obviously companies, large corporations are actually at the forefront of climate change. They are actually being impacted by climate change through their supply chains, but they are also part of the solutions. And it's so important today that the EU is able to set the right standards and regulation to have a legislative environment that enables a transformation of the economy. And so we're very, very happy and pleased to welcome speakers from Belgium, Germany and Romania, and they will speak to us about their experience in terms of implementing the EU legislation on sustainability and reporting for companies, which is so important, and really talking about what is working on the ground in the countries to guide also your work as a network for sharing the best practices. Actually, I didn't introduce myself, I forgot, but my name is Elise Buckle. I'm the co-president of Climate and Sustainability. I've been also facilitating many partnerships, including the Planetary Emergency Partnership. This year, we are actually focusing on a new initiative called She Changes Climate, and we are focusing on women empowerment as a key to the transformation of climate policies and the economy. So we're working very closely with the COP27 presidency in Egypt on this topic of a 50-50 vision at the top. So men and women together addressing this planetary emergency. So now we're going to hear from Mr. Tom Dodd, who is the team leader on sustainable reporting for the European Commission. So we're very, very happy to have you here, Tom, with all your expertise. And the floor is yours to introduce the topic today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning, everybody. I've been asked just to give a bit of context by providing some words about where we've come from and where we are in terms of the development of European legislation. So rewind almost 10 years now, the EU agreed the non-financial reporting directive. It was, I suppose, in retrospect, a critical first step. If nothing else, it established the legal principle that certain companies would be required by law to report what we then called non-financial information, what I think today we call sustainability information. That, at the time, and even though the requirements were not that extensive, was quite a controversial thing to be doing. One or two member states had introduced some kind of laws, but it certainly was not at that time a generally accepted principle. One or two other important principles introduced by the non-financial reporting directive. One is that we were dealing with the whole range of sustainability issues. So from the beginning, European law was not simply talking about environment, it was talking about environment, it was talking about some social issues and certain governmental issues. And I think a third important principle already embedded into the non-financial reporting directive is what we often refer to as double materiality, by which we mean, and I suspect many of you may know this, we mean reporting on how sustainability issues might affect the company, how they might generate risks for the company primarily, and also, and independently of whether there are any risks for the company, an objective account of the company's own impacts on sustainability issues, so on people and on the environment. And it is important to note that that principle, although not very clear, was already embedded in the non-financial reporting directive. So far, so good with the non-financial reporting directive, but I think it is widely agreed that in practice it turned out to have quite a number of weaknesses. So the EU had made a very significant first step, but the framework was incomplete. Most importantly, the reporting requirements themselves were high level in the sense that they weren't very detailed. They left a very large margin of flexibility to companies and others, in fact, about how to interpret them and about how to comply with them. That meant, in reality, that the reporting done by companies according to the non-financial reporting directive, while good in the case of some companies, overall didn't provide a guarantee that the reporting was comparable between companies, didn't provide a guarantee that companies would report all information that the users of that information thought would be relevant, didn't therefore ensure that the reporting was providing a complete view of the company's risks and its impacts. The NFRD, the Non-Financial Reporting Directive, didn't require any kind of audit or assurance. So while one or two member states did introduce such a requirement, across the EU as a whole, there was no guarantee about the reliability of the information companies were reporting. And also what we call the scope, so that the number of companies brought into this framework was relatively restricted. So it was large companies, if they have more than 500 employees, if they are listed, and if they are banks or assurance companies. So there are a very large number of companies, including big companies, who were not covered by these reporting requirements. So fast forward a few years, we now have the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. In a nutshell, it aims to address the weaknesses of the non-financial reporting directive. It aims to complete the framework where the non-financial reporting framework left gaps. Therefore, it aims to meet the needs of users, that's to say, investors and a lot of other stakeholders through society, including civil society and trade unions, meet their needs for information that is reliable, that is, broadly speaking, comparable between companies, that is complete in the sense that it covers all relevant information. All of this, of course, in a radically different context compared to 2012 or 13. And the differences are quite extraordinary in many ways. At a policy level, you have the Paris Agreement, you have the Sustainability Development Goals. At the EU level, you have a whole series of other legislation on sustainable finance. We now have a climate law. Perhaps above all, the demand from the market and from other stakeholders for good sustainability information is simply not comparable with how it was 10 years ago. It is a major shift. And that is the context in which the CSRD has been developed and subsequently approved. I think the main points of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, you probably know: mandatory European standards, that's the detailed reporting requirements that were missing in the non-financial reporting directive. More companies covered. So by the time we're complete, essentially all large companies, so all companies that are not SMEs, and all listed companies, including listed SMEs, will be covered. There is an audit or assurance requirement that will be phased in, but that is there. So all in all, we hope to have a complete sustainability reporting framework that in one way or another puts sustainability information on the same level as financial information. And that is quite a significant change. The text of the newly approved, sorry, the final text of the newly approved Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive should be published in the EU's official journal by the end of this year. And in parallel to all that work, the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, EFRAG, is working on draft sustainability reporting standards. We expect that within about a month, EFRAG will submit its final proposed draft standards to us in the European Commission. And we then have until the end of next year in order to adopt them into European law. That will be a first set of standards. We expect that the framework will be further complemented by additional standards over the coming years. Thanks.
Thank you so much for this introduction. And indeed, this is quite an important time in history in terms of the regulation of companies in the EU. And as you said, big step, both in terms of quantity and quality, because I understand now it's not just 11,000 companies that have to comply, but actually 50,000 companies. And also the quality of information is going to be improved a lot. Obviously, if companies comply with the new regulation, which is a challenge now, I guess, for member states to make sure there is actually compliance. So thank you so much for your leadership and for the leadership of the European Union and the Commission on this very, very important topic. I'm based here in Switzerland, and we always look at what Brussels is doing as the best example of what Switzerland should do. And so thank you for that. So now we're going to turn to our distinguished delegates from countries. I believe we're going to start with our colleague from Romania. I'm just checking that the sound is working for you, Laszlo.
Yes, good day. Thank you very much for
Welcome.
inviting me. It's okay?
Yes, welcome, Laszlo. I believe you are joining us from Bucharest. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. So Laszlo Borbeli is the state councillor for the Prime Minister's office in Romania. So thank you so much for joining from the Prime Minister's office. We would like to hear from you now about your experience in terms of the transformation of the economy in Romania And if you could tell us a little bit more about how do you assess the implementation of these new regulation? Where first, how did it go with the non-financial reporting directive until now, and how do you see this transition now to the new corporate sustainability reporting directive? What do you think are the most important aspects to consider in this transition and in the implementation of the new directive? Over to you.
Thank you very much. You know, you should ask why me, because I am coordinating the Sustainable Development Goals and the implementation of Agenda 2030. Of course, there are Ministry of Finance, especially, and others who are in charge to implement this directive. But since the beginning, we were looking very attentive to, of course, circular economy, taxation, different parts of sustainability, which is strongly related to this directive. And you know, I was attended a seminar in 2018 with the German Code of Sustainability. They presented their experience from Germany, which is functionable since 2011. And at that time, I told to my colleagues, we have to do more in Romania. Why? Because in this moment, as Thomas Dodds said about some restrictions, in Romania, first of all, we have two governmental decisions to orders of the Ministry of Finance. First, since 2016, probably, it was just for those companies of public interest more than 500 employees. And it was a restriction. It was just about 100 companies that they should, in each year and the end of the year, to make a report. After that, we start to discuss with the Ministry of Finance. They changed, and now there are more than 500 employees, but not just public interest. And we realized 2 or 3 issues. One, you have to be transparent. Yes, you have to be transparent to the citizens, and everybody has to know what they are doing, these companies in this field. In this moment in Romania, unfortunately, they make, you know, the report of financial and non-financial report each year, and they give to the trade register. And in this field, if me, like citizen, I want to analyze a company, I have to go to the trade, I have to pay some fees. So it's not a control. It's not a control, because the Ministry of Finance told me that they have not enough capacity. So we were thinking to change it, and that's why I hope that it's a good initiative. With the German colleagues, with our German colleagues, we translate their code. It's a very good code, in my opinion. It's a special institution which will be established in Romania based on European project. Until the end of the year, we will have some kind of board of those specialists who can help us during the next years. And of course, to have more transparency, to have a platform for this, for those citizens and everybody. And for me, it was very surprising that the companies we met, I don't know how many times, we organized about more than 20 meetings with companies, because without them, we cannot be successful. And they were in favor. They were very engaged. We sent them a questionnaire, they complete, we had a partnership with them, and we study what is their opinion. And in my opinion, the most important is that based on the new directive of European Union, and I would like to congratulate our colleagues from European Union, because in my opinion, it's a good one, and they help us to have a broad picture about what they are doing, the companies in different fields, and it's very important for us. So we are preparing this new, you know, based on the probably a governmental decision for sure, to have a new institution, we have a platform. In this moment, we have this platform with other issues, but we have a separate platform for code of sustainability in Romania. And we will help companies, I hope, to prepare themselves for the next directive. So it's not an additional work for them, in my opinion. It's to prepare them to be more familiar based on the decision of European Union to start in 2024, 2025, and after to prepare themselves for the report. And if they report some additional issues, is no problem. And I hope that will be useful also for the society, also for the companies, and also for the government part to prove that we have of course, companies. And after that, we have to ask them if they are not doing well in this field. I don't know if it will be obligatory or with the sanctions. I don't like sanctions and obligatory. But in Romania, sometimes you have to oblige companies, in my opinion, to do this. So this is our intention and our vision on this, because it's also a new approach on how to have this partnership with the private companies.
Thank you so much, Laszlo. Very, very interesting. And indeed, you have the top-down pressure in a way coming from the EU to comply with this new directive, but also the bottom-up pressure from consumers. And I think this is what Mr. Thomas Dodd spoke about in the introduction, that this is also what consumers want now, better products, better reporting, more compliance. And it's very interesting to hear about what your government is doing in terms of supporting the companies with the compliance, with economic incentives, but also sanctions. So the carrot and the stick. And we'd like to hear from you. What are the other tools you have put in place now to support the companies in Romania to comply with the directive? You mentioned this platform. I believe it's a platform for sharing knowledge, sharing best practices. Are there any other initiatives in Romania that you are developing to really support the companies in this transition?
It's a very good question. First of all, we have to analyze how we can, decrease the number of employees and to have the obligation to report, and we have to help them because they are smaller companies, probably, I don't know, but they need some expertise on this. First of all, I have to tell you that we will have I think a unique center in this part of Europe based on our recovery plan, a center of excellence. What means this center of excellence? To help public administration first, and it's about, of course, sustainable development goals. First of all, to have the expertise and by European projects, by our budget, to help them, because it's not just about this CSR report, it's about how to fulfill study regulatory impact assessments, different strategies, also linked to, in some way, to companies. So in this moment, we are in the stage that to prepare this center of excellence, we will have experts in sustainable development, which is a new job in Romania. And as I understood, in European Union, we are pioneers on this. We will have until 2026, 2,000 experts in sustainable development, 80% from local level. And why it's important for us? Because we have a relationship with the universities. I have to tell you that after we start this movement of sustainability in Romania, the universities are responding very in a positive way. And now we have a consortium, we have a protocol with the Council of Rectors, and we have 9 universities. They prepare trainings, post-university trainings, so they will have in their curricula this kind of trainings, because they have to train this 2,000 of, so that's why it's important to have an initiative and to realize for the university, and we have the budget. We have the budget until 2026 for these 2,000 experts, and we have to specialize them. And one specialty will be for these trainings to train the public administration also to give more details, and of course after that the private companies in this field of report and how to educate them. So that's why it's important, in my opinion, to have a vision, but to have tools in your hand, and of course political willingness, because without political willingness I cannot go forward. So in my opinion, this platform will help very much, this platform which will be accessible for all citizens, and the partnership with the private companies, with the Center of Excellence and our experts in sustainable development.
Thank you so much. Really good to hear about this Center of Excellence. This is probably something that other member states should duplicate in their own countries. So thank you for sharing your experience. Please stay with us. We're now going to travel back from Eastern Europe to Western Europe. And we're turning to Mrs. Karen Hofmans, who is a General Advisor for Economic Regulation at the Federal Public Service Economy in Belgium. So Karen, you've been leading the negotiations with the EU Council, so with other member states, on the negotiation of the text for this new directive. Obviously, a lot of these negotiations are highly confidential, but could you give us a sense of the mood? You know, how was it in the discussion? Was it easy to come to a consensus, or did you feel it was actually quite fragmented between the member states?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. As you can imagine, it's difficult to give information on the discussions or points of view expressed by the member states during the negotiation at the European Council. But I can, however, tell that there has been a real willingness to achieve a compromise text with the European Parliament and with the European Commission, and this within a short time frame. The different member states were convinced of the necessity to take more actions on a European level after the transposition of the NFRD into the national laws.
Thank you. And what do you think was successful now in terms of your perspective from Belgium, from a country perspective? What do you think are the best aspects of these new corporate social responsibility directives?
Yes, we are convinced that the scope of the CSRD is more balanced than before, and that a higher amount of undertakings are going to be required to report on their sustainability matters. This is the result of more requests for information about sustainability matters addressed to undertakings, and this is justified with regard to the impacts and accountability of large undertakings with respect to responsibility. We also welcome the simplified reporting standard for small and medium-sized listed undertakings that can be used voluntarily by other undertakings as well. Another important aspect is the harmonization on European level of the reporting. Under the NFRD, undertakings may rely on national, European, or international reporting frameworks. Therefore, to date, there is no common reporting framework for the undertakings in the European Union. And under the CSRD, the adoption of sustainability reporting standards by the European Commission will give, to the greatest extent possible, due consideration to the main sustainability reporting standards used worldwide. A last important aspect is the enforcement. We indeed consider the establishment of a mandatory assurance of the sustainability reporting as a necessary step for reaching high quality and credible reporting information.
Thank you, Karen. And in terms of the previous directive, apparently in 2020, there was a report published by KPMG in Belgium that showed that even 3 years after the NFRD, many companies were not complying with this directive. So why do you think it was so challenging for companies in Belgium to comply with the previous directive, the non-financial reporting directive? And what are the lessons learned? You know, what do we need then to make sure the new directive, the CSRD, is being implemented by companies in Belgium?
We do not have a clear view on the methodology KPMG has used, but we had a look at 2 studies carried out by the Belgian regulator, the FSMA, on the non-financial information and reporting obligation by Belgian listed undertakings. And in his last survey report released in 2021, the FSMA has noticed an improvement of the quality of the reporting of Belgian undertakings subject to the NFRD over the financial year 2020, for instance, on environmental matters, but there is still room for better reporting. Under the CSRD, we are convinced that sustainability reporting would be better for 3 reasons. The first reason is there is more awareness by the management of undertakings about climate change and environmental factors due to the implementation of sustainability finance regulation, but also the pressure coming from stakeholders and consumers, and also the growing attention given by the media on this subject. The second reason is that the assurance of sustainability reporting would be mandatory due to the CSRD, which means less boilerplating and greenwashing in the reporting. A third reason why the sustainability reporting would be better under the CSRD is that the European Commission would be empowered to establish one single European standard, which would help undertakings to better understand on what they will have to report and how they will have to report.
Thank you so much, Karen. Very interesting indeed. So better compliance, less greenwashing, you use that important word, but also better leadership, I guess, from CEOs of companies, and making sure there's also more public awareness in the companies, making sure climate and sustainability are also a topic for boardrooms. So indeed, there was a change in the level of education of the corporate leadership at this level. So thank you so much. Please also stay with us with your colleague from Romania. We're now going to turn to Germany. We have the pleasure of hosting Mr. Jans Witzmann. Jans, you are actually the head of unit for the German Ministry of Justice. So you are really at the center of the compliance system in Germany, very important role. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience in Germany? How did you think that the NFRD was implemented? What were the lessons learned from the previous phase?
Thank you, Elise, and good morning to my fellow speakers and to the audience, of course. Yeah, thank you for the question. What was the implementation and what are the lessons learned maybe? So let's start maybe with the things that we have identified during the transposition and afterwards. First of all, the transposition of the NFRD and the implementation of sustainability reporting in Germany was a huge step, but retrospectively, it helped to boost acceptance for the subject, not only for those companies that are reporting now because they're obliged to, but also because it raised awareness, and a lot of undertakings followed by reporting voluntarily in the meantime. So that is one concrete result that we have from the implementation. That is something we really think is a positive development. And looking at a more detailed level, I think Tom has already addressed some of the, let's say, weaknesses maybe of the NFRD, but most of them have been addressed in the CSRD, and I think it's therefore not necessary to mention all of them, of course, since we're talking about the future here. But one, of course, was the double materiality concept that was not, let's say, that was a bit ambiguous in the NFRD, and therefore it is good that this is now clarified in the CSRD. This is one concrete thing I think that we have found during the transposition work as a challenge. But something that is still relevant, of course, is the need for, or maybe the need to focus maybe on less but more relevant information to some point, not of course with respect to the reporting requirements, but when it comes to a more detailed level. And there we heard a lot that it might be good to look at maybe less requirements, but more relevant ones, especially when it comes to KPIs. So this is certainly something that is true now, especially when we look at the standard setting going forward. And if we maybe look now in a more broader perspective, I think there are lessons learned. There are three things that I would like to highlight. So first of all, it's flexibility. Then the second thing I think is, I would call it a step-by-step approach. And the last thing, maybe I would call it a trial and error philosophy when we look at sustainability reporting. What do I mean by that? First of all, flexibility. So as Thomas said, there have been some weaknesses in the NFRD, but I think to some, and I agree with that. But for some of those weaknesses, they have been turned into strength by the market, by the undertakings, let's say. And one of them is maybe the flexibility that was given to undertakings with regard to frameworks and standards, because they were left to choose what kind of frameworks they would apply and standards. And that gave room to initiatives like the Sustainability Code in Germany that was there already, but what has been adopted, of course, and it has been widely used. It was the second most used standard used in Germany. So that certainly helped to support these kind of initiatives, and initiatives that we are able to learn today, because this broad range of different standards, of course, needs to be somehow harmonized, but of course they give us a lot of ideas. And I think that was something good when we talk about turning weaknesses into strength. And another issue is, of course, assurance. There was no assurance back then, and I think it's good that this is now changed with the CSRD. But during the transposition work, we have decided to give that task to the supervisory board, so that they have to check sustainability reporting, and the statutory auditor, he needs to check whether the non-financial information is there, which is quite small task, of course. It's no assurance, but he needs to check that at least, and the supervisory board has to check the information as such. So therefore, that flexibility helped a lot in order to develop ideas how to tackle with that. And there's a small but growing number of undertakings in Germany that already now use reasonable assurance by an external auditor for their sustainability reporting already, although they aren't obliged to do that, and it won't be before 2028. So I think that is certainly something that is encouraging. Undertakings have used that flexibility that was given to them, and yeah, so again, turning weaknesses into strength. That's what I would highlight here. And about my second thing that I've put on my list as learnings, it's step by step. Something that we approach now as well in the CSRD. So he should not overwhelm undertakings with this. We are taking huge steps in light speed, so to say. And of course, this is necessary. Everybody's convinced about that. But on the other hand, acceptance is necessary as well. And there, I think, step by step might be the right approach. And this was also like on a broader, or on a higher level, so to say, with the NFRD first and then the CSRD. So having some kind of sandbox where undertakings could try out a bit And now we're getting more concrete, addressing those weaknesses. But also within the CSRD, we also have learned from this step-by-step approach that we have the introduction of the obligations step by step, depending on the size of the company, etc., whether they're listed or not. And so this is something important also with respect to the assurance, that we take a step-by-step approach towards reasonable assurance at the end. And so I think this is really important to not overwhelm undertakings. And this is an important learning.
Thank you,
so
Jan. Thank you. Excellent. So focusing on less but better information and a step-by-step approach, stepwise approach. Very, very interesting. Thank you to learn about your experience. Some people say that Germany is going to become the new leader in sustainable finance, and you have developed these sustainability codes. Do you think Germany is the leader now, or becoming the leader in Europe and beyond?
I think that's a difficult question, and I think it's not for me to answer that, to judge that. I think there are important initiatives in Germany. We have the International Sustainability Standards Board here in Germany, for example, Frankfurt. And this was a huge step for the sustainable finance community in Germany. And of course, as you've mentioned, the Sustainability Code was a huge step and something that is truly the work of pioneers. But yeah, that's what I can say as an example. But again, it's not for me to judge whether Germany is a leader here.
Thank you, Jan. So actually, there are also questions from the floor for you, and I really encourage all the participants to ask their questions in the chat. And please do write who you are and where you work, so that we know also who's asking the question. So apparently there's a question to you asking about how can companies prepare when the standards are actually not finished. So the companies don't know exactly what they need to report on. So what would you respond? This is in relation to the ESRS.
Okay, this is to me, you said? Okay, well, I need to say that we are not in charge for the standards, so this is maybe more a question for Tom, but of course I can say that there are drafts of these standards, they're publicly debated, they are going to be sent to the Commission, and I guess from there on, it's maybe better for Tom to give an answer to that.
Tom? Anything you'd like to add?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry, because my screen is blinking at me. Okay, as long as you can hear, that's the important thing. So we believe that companies will have adequate time to prepare. There are very draft standards already available online, and while they will not represent what is the final standards agreed, it already gives an idea and a flavor of what may be coming. Then remember that the reporting requirements are phased in for different categories of companies. So any company that has been subject to the non-financial reporting directive will be amongst the first wave. And we would expect that companies that have been subject to the non-financial reporting directive will already have been doing reasonably serious corporate sustainability reporting already. So companies who are new to this will have a further year. That means they will have at least 18 months or so to prepare themselves. And at the same time, we will, of course, make sure, and the CSRD requires us to make sure, that the standards are proportionate and that they don't go beyond what they need to do in order to meet the CSRD objectives. We also need to make sure, of course, that they do meet the CSRD objectives. Is it tough? Yes, it's tough. I think we need to recognize that it is tough for everybody, but we are talking about an emergency transition of our economy. So I don't think anyone, either in business or in politics or policy making, should think that we have the luxury of going slowly on this.
And Thomas, there's actually another question for you. Someone is asking about the consequences in case of non-compliance, because apparently the directive is not very clear about what will happen when companies don't comply. And I did work at the European Parliament a while ago on another piece of legislation on chemicals and their impact on health and environment. And I can imagine that there was an intense lobbying of the finance industry and companies in the corridor to also to water down the directive. So what is the position of the Commission in terms of making sure there is actually some sanction in case of non-compliance, given the fact that it's not clear in the directive from what I can read in the question?
I mean, the reason, let's be clear, the reason it's not clear in the directive is because member states didn't want it to be any more clear than it is. The Commission's initial proposal did introduce some sort of minimum level of harmonization of sanctions in the case of non-compliance. But the member states decided that they didn't want that and preferred to defer to the default, which is in the accounting directive, which is essentially that member states apply their own systems. So the sanctions or penalties will vary from member state to member state.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So the Commission is at the forefront of regulation, but some member states are more worried about the consequences, I guess, in terms of non-compliance. There's another question for you, Jan, in Germany. According to the CSRD, member states will be allowed to accredit independent assurance services providers. How do you deal with that? What are the examples of accreditations of assurance providers? I'm guessing this is about auditing firms that are verifying the financial statements and the reports to make sure they are accurate. Yeah,
thank you. And thank you for the question. So I have to say, the CSRD won't be published before end of the year, as Thomas said. And the transposition works, of course, we are preparing the transposition, but they really can start we shift into a higher gear once this will be published. So as an official of the German government, I cannot tell that we have a decided position on that matter. So that is a rather short answer that might not be satisfying, but this is something, I need to adhere to. We need to align on this point first, and then we can, be open about it.
Thank you. So learning by doing also on this important topic of verification. Karen, I see you are nodding. Anything that you would like to add to that in your experience?
Yes, it's in the text of the directive of CSRD. It's an option to provide for an IASP, independent assurance services provider. And in Belgium, it is the same. We are waiting for the publication of the directive, and then the analysis work at the political level will start to see what we will do on this option to provide for an independent assurance service provider, or it will be the statutory auditor, like the financial information.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, very interesting.
I have to, can I add something? Thank you.
Yes, of course.
So two comments. First of all, yes, we will need probably also in Romania this kind of assurance audit because we have no capacity, in my opinion, in this moment. That's why in this moment it's very difficult for me also to get informations about these reports, because we have to go to this trade agency, and the Ministry of Finance has no capacity, they told me, to monitor and to have a record. So we will need this kind. But secondly, I would like just to mention that as I saw, Jan is working at the Ministry of Justice, yes, and Karen is from Federal Public Services Economy. In my opinion, and for sure it's clarified also in German and Belgium how different institutions will be involved maybe, but it's important to have, that's why we established also this Code of Sustainability under our coordination of department, because it related to sustainability. And I think it was a good idea of Romanian government and from the department to be coordinator of this, because we can discuss also with Ministry of Finance, with other ministries, Ministry of Economy and others, maybe to put them at the same table. So that's why, in my opinion, in this moment, I hope that will be okay for us to establish this kind of system, because it's very important to have the feedback from the companies, to prepare the companies, and that's why it's important to educate them some way. The companies to be prepared for the new CSR report, and I believe it will be a very, very good lesson for our economies to have a more sustainable approach on different areas. And I am very, you know, if we will organize, I don't know, in a couple of months again, to learn from each other, yes? So it will be very interesting to see in Belgium or in Germany or in other states which kind of report will be, and to learn each from other. That's why we translate the German Code of Sustainability, because in my opinion it was good to have this kind of code. Thank you.
Thank you, Laszlo. Very interesting that you also have a code of sustainability, and we're hoping that obviously this is also going to help for the implementation of the directive. But there's another question for you on the question of implementation, actually, because it is challenging for large companies. But what about the small and medium enterprises? How is it for them, and how do you support them for this implementation?
For me, was the question?
Yes, for smaller companies.
Yes, it was mentioned in my speech, and also one of the colleagues mentioned this. We have to have a probably different kind of reports. Yes, a more detailed report to the big companies, and maybe some possibility to have not so sophisticated, and of course it's about also money to prepare this kind of report, or to engage some experts to make it. So it's an open question also for my colleagues, probably from other states.
Yes, indeed.
How we can for small, and what is the number of employees, and this is an open question. It's like a menu, of course. This directive, there are some obligatory steps, and there are some under the appreciation of the states, like to be obligatory or voluntary. It's up to the states.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Karen or Jan, anything you want to say about what member states can do to support smaller companies with the implementation? Karen?
We are glad that the text of the directive is foreseeing a voluntary simplified reporting standard for small and medium-sized undertakings. And we think, like already Jan said before, it will be a step-by-step approach, and they will be involved more and more, but maybe there can be sort of expert center, like our colleague from Romania said, that can bring together some expertise, some best practices. Maybe it's possible on a European level, because we will have a harmonization from the European standards. So maybe some guidance can be given on that level, but that is maybe too early today to see what we can do together with the other member states.
Thank you, Karen. We're going to move to closing. So I will ask each of the panelists to share one key takeaway from the session today. I also understand that There's a lot of information available about EU sustainability policy in the podcast Sustainability Made in Europe, which is being prepared by the host here. But maybe let's ask Thomas in Brussels, what would be your top recommendations to member states to accelerate the implementation of the new directive?
Prepare as early as possible. Frankly, we all know that time is very short. Time is short for standard development. Time is short for approval. Time is short for companies to get ready. Time is short also for the audit and assurance people to get ready. So obviously the faster that member state administrations are able to go in terms of transposition, the better. But it's challenging for all of us.
Thank you. So indeed, the member states need to translate the EU directive into their national legislation and be quite specific about what companies need to report on, and the type of information, focusing on less but better information, and also being clear about what's happening in case of non-compliance. I think this is something that came up during the whole debate. Jan, anything you want to share from Germany? What would be your key lessons learned, that you want to share with other member states as well?
Yeah, thank you. I can only repeat what Tom has said. Yeah, prepare, start to prepare, start now. That's important. But my own message would be, of course, as well, and this is a learning also from the NFRD, broad participation. So more of this, what we did today, more discussion, more hearing of each other, really broad participation, make everybody aware of it, and try to get all the different opinions about it, and then put them together in order to make this work, because this is really important. We need to hear what the practice needs, and that's, I think, also key going forward. Thank you.
Laszlo, what is your key takeaway from today's discussion?
I think more collaboration with private sector and civil society, because during the years we discussed with several very well prepared NGOs on this field, and we pressed some kind of pressure, we put some kind of pressure together with them, the Ministry of Finance, to change the order. So that's why it's important to prepare ourselves, but to not forget that we need the companies on the board, and we need the expertise and the help to prepare them also from the civil society.
Excellent, thank you. Karen, you have the last word.
I think after the NFRD, the harmonization of the reporting obligation on a EU level is a key message in order to guarantee an equal level playing field for all European undertakings, and in order to cope global challenges like, for instance, climate change.
Thank you so much for these last few words. And I think what I will remember from you, Karen, is that you were mentioning in the negotiations, there was this willingness to succeed, all of us together. And thank you for everyone here on this panel today. I think we learned a lot. We've had almost 300 participants joining, amazing discussion. And of course it is challenging, but what gives us hope is that there is this willingness to succeed together, all of us working as one team for one planet. So thank you so much. I don't know, Arno, if you want to say a word of goodbye. Very inspiring work and good luck. I hope that this directive will make, I'm sure it will make a big change in the economy in Europe and beyond. Thank you, have a good day, and we look forward to hearing from the organizers about the podcast and other webinars. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. I know all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.